So welcome back to Sprague Homestead. This week, we're going to work on putting on a new kitchen faucet. Now, when you're homesteading, somebody should be kind of a handyman. Whether you have the skills or someone on the homestead has the skills, you've got to have a little bit of everything. So in ours, I am the plumber, and today we're going to put on the faucet. So this is a faucet that I put in a couple years ago, and because of the high mineral content of the water coming out of our well, it needs to be replaced. So the top of it has corroded to the point where the ball socket where this is here now shoots water up and out of it, and it doesn't stay attached. So if I pull down, you'll see it comes off pretty easily. So we've got a kind of a binder clip from the office here holding the hose, because when the top comes off, it tends to shoot up in there, and then you've got to fight it for 10 minutes with tweezers and a lot of cuss words to get it back. Now, putting in a faucet is pretty standard, pretty easy to do as long as you have all the parts. Most of the time you can buy a kit, so I bought a kit basically just to replace this that comes with all the hoses, connections, everything to go in here. So the first thing I've done is I've cleaned out, obviously, around the sink on the top. I've cleaned out underneath so I can get to all the connections easily, and then I have turned the water off. So you may have probably a quick turn, kind of a 90-degree turn, turn the water off, make sure it's all drained out. You will still have some on the line, so just maybe have a catch pan there, or be prepared to kind of wipe it up with some towels once it is disconnected, because the water will tend to go down through the hoses and feed through gravity. Now at this point you can kind of get together your tools that you might need. So you might have like an open-end crescent wrench or an adjustable wrench to help take the connections loose. You will need some thread tape, probably some of the white thread tape if you're not going to use the sealant, which is kind of a goo you can paste on there. Your choice to use both of those. I'll probably just use the tape sealant. I have a lot of it, and it's easy to use. So the first things I'm going to do is take apart the connections underneath at the wall. Just take those off, and then I'll take the hoses loose, drain them out, make sure everything is dry enough to start working on, and then I can start taking apart the old faucet to get it up and out of the way. Alright, so to take your faucet out after your hoses have completely drained out, it's going to be a little different for everybody. So if you have two lines, basically a hot and a cold coming into the faucet, you may be able to take the lines off, and then there's probably like a large fastening nut that is holding the faucet head down to the sink. So for ours, this was already replaced once with a 2-into-1, and now I've kind of gone into a 2-into-1 into a big base. So if I show you, these are the hot and the cold coming in that came in from the wall. They go into the faucet itself. The faucet then has a large out. Basically, your 2-into-1 has a valve into here, goes out into this, and then this goes into that. Now this will thread in. This has a locking piece. This is a one-time lock. It will not come back apart, but you can unthread the other side here. You can basically just twist the plastic and unthread this. Now there will be a weight that goes on these when you put your old one on, or take the old one off and put the new one on. So don't put these together when you start it, but to get it apart, there's going to be one large nut that basically has a washer that sits on the underside, puts pressure and pulls the faucet down there. So to get this out, disconnect the lines, disconnect the main tube here, or the main nut holding that together, disconnect this hose, and then it will all kind of just feed out that way. Alright, so once everything's taken apart, you can then clean the base here, and then take out your old one and your new one. So you can see the old one had threaded rods in here that I had to take off, some washers on the back that held it down into the sink. The new one going in has no rods, so it will just literally sit over the top. You'll put your faucet down through and then put the nut on the back side. So the new faucet going in is pretty simple. It does have a little bit of assembly beforehand. So it comes with two steel hoses, or steel braided hoses. One does have a blue and one does have a red. And if you notice on the bottom of the sink, or the faucet itself, one has a blue tag, one has a red. So these are color coded. Just put the red to red, blue to blue. And then you're going to leave your main hose disconnected for the point, because you have to put some other pieces in there once it's down through the sink. So then once this is all assembled, you're just going to feed the snakes down through the hole. So now once you get the faucet fed down through the sink itself, this is the time to double check that your hoses are the correct length. If you have a corner sink like ours, or you got some funky plumbing, now is the time to catch that the hoses are or are not long enough. So once you have it fed down through there and assembled, double check that the hoses actually reach before you connect everything else, and then try to put the hoses on and realize you got to take it all back apart. So once you have the hoses connected, they do fit, and if you had or had not need to go to the appliance store or wherever else to get a hose, you can then put it in the bottom. So now this has one main colander or one main nut on the bottom that goes with it. It does have a washer that goes on the bottom, so this will fit over first, fit all the hoses down through the middle there, and then tighten this up to where this is connected. At that point, you can then try to put your weight on, so you want to put the weight at the bottom so your main hose will come down and you'll connect it to where it wants to spray out the top. You can then put your weight on or put it on prior to that if it's a 2-piece or a 1-piece based on your instructions, and then you can connect your hoses up. And at that point, in theory, you should be ready to test it. So double check your connections at that point, make sure everything's tight and it's not going to spray water all over, and then you can test it. So let me finish this up and we're going to see if I am actually the plumber that I believe I am. So once everything's connected up, you've double checked your connections, you can then make sure all your drains connected, because I took ours off because I need it back in the corner. But everything's connected and works, and then, drum roll. That's it. So now that's how to replace a faucet. Pretty simple stuff. Most of the time will come with instructions on the new one, so it just depends on if you have to take off how many lines, 2 to 1, take it out, and then follow the instructions that would most likely come with it, or the tools to put it back. Always double check your connections, and if you need to use the tape, you can. This had O-rings on everything, which I much prefer over the tape, and then just make sure they're all secured down. That's pretty simple, and that's how to do a kitchen faucet very simply. And that took me, with filming, probably about 45 minutes. So that's it for this week on Sprague Homestead. Remember, you've got to be a handyman on the homestead. Somebody has to have every skill, whether it's you or somebody on the team. We'll see you next week.